Hey guys, how's it going? I actually had a request in the comments to essentially make a combo video for Despia, so that's what I'll attempt to be doing with this, just so the words, sentences, show some of the combos that this particular build, but I guess by extension most Despia builds in general are capable of, and then just some general tips and tricks that you would need to know when using Despia cards and their interactions that occur. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover everything because there's just a bunch that depends on both the matchup and the board state. So I'm going to cover as much as I can. If you have any other questions, then I'm sure there's other. Oh my God, can I speak today? Oh, this is why you tune in to me, isn't it? If you have any other questions, then I'm sure there's a bunch of other videos out there, or just leave a comment and I'll try to answer that question if I can. Because, I mean, like I said, I'm going to try to cover everything, but there's just some stuff I'm not going to be able to. But let's start with one of the most basic things you can ever do in this deck. Just setting up the most simple board that you can that has a decent bit of interaction. You have, this will probably include something like Albaz, or if you get to it through branded opening, and then just any other basic material that you can use to fuse. The most popular one is Dramaturge, because then that gets you an additional interruption. So you would use your normal summon on Albaz. If you don't have access to the field spell already, then you would search out the theater. So you get the theater, activate the theater. Now you can fuse theater effect, fuse these two off. This goes to grave, and the most basic one you can go into is Quertus, helps keep you alive, and then Dramaturge, which uses material, so it comes back. It doesn't matter what zone you put these in. I generally put this in the middle, and I put Dramaturge in this zone over here just to, you know, play around Transverser. It really doesn't matter with this deck, but I mean, this is a 3K body, so you can do that. You put this in defense just because, you know, same attack and defense doesn't really matter. This, if you think you're going to be using Quertus' effect, then you could just put it in defense. Or if you just want to play around Lightning Storm in general, I know a lot more people at my local have access to Lightning Storm. Only reason I'm hesitant to do that sometimes is because this is a 3K body, but it has 1500 defense, so it's easier for a lot of stuff to beat over it. Generally speaking, you wouldn't care because you just care about the interruption that this has when your opponent summons something from the extra deck. So that's really on you. It just depends on the situation. So there are situations where I put it in attack. There are some where I put it in defense. It just doesn't matter. Keep in mind, when you use Dramaturge as material, it does not care if it gets banished. It just cares if it was used as fusion material. You can only do it once per turn. Obviously it says on the text, but it doesn't care if it gets banished. If you're under macro or something, or you're using another effect like one of Albaz's second effects and it gets banished instead, it doesn't care. It still comes back to the field because it was used as material, so keep that in mind. Speaking of Albaz, this deck uses Albaz as one of its gimmicks, so I'll just generally go over how most of those interactions work. There's not really much to go over because in order to go over Albaz in depth, it really depends on the matchup and the board state, which is why you play a bunch of targets. Go back and see the last video where I had the deck profile for this. You'll see all the targets I'm playing. If you want to change up the targets, and then obviously some of the targets will change when the structure deck comes out. But if you just want to see a brief list of what I'm running, and just to give you some ideas, go check out that last video. But I'll show you some of the basic interactions that you, well, I guess really the only generic interaction that comes up with Albaz. First, if you use it as your normal summon, when this card is normal or special, you discard a card and you fuse with anything on the field. That's basically Albaz's gimmick. So obviously you have to have another card, and then, you know, the field is your material. Have fun with that. Super poly on legs. That's if it's you can use it as your normal summon. Obviously you want to try and use Albaz, that way you get more value out of it, but if you need to use it as your normal summon, you can. Otherwise, that's why we play Ecclesia, because you can special Ecclesia. Ecclesia is really good going second, plus it's just a light if you need it as fusion. You special Ecclesia. If your opponent doesn't read cards, they can shotgun their Imperm or their Veiler, and then you just go quick effect tag out, because that is a quick effect. You tag out to the grave, summon Albaz from the deck, discard a card, and do the exact same thing. Remember with Ecclesia, if you fused, is it if you fused or if you, yeah, during the end phase, a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard. Okay, so it's not if you fused. If a fusion was sent to the graveyard, which in certain situations it was, then you get this back to your hand. So just keep that in mind, because you know, value. And that's really the most generic interaction I can tell you with Albaz, because like I said, it depends on the board state. Another cool one that you can do is getting into 2 Masquerade Dragon. This one is this one's pretty funny. You do need access to I guess in total 3 material, but if you have something like Dramaturge or where are you? Or Ad Libitum, and then you have something else that can come back. You need access to 3 material in general, but these have a bunch of different scenarios where they can get you more material back. When Ad Libitum is used as material, it specials a Despia back from the grave or from banished, and yeah, that just gets you more material that way. Or, you know, Dramaturge comes back. You need access to a total of 3 material for this, as well as one of the fusion spells. So let's say you start with Albaz, Dramaturge, and then the field spell. You would need access to either that, if you have it already, or if the field spell is branded in red instead, it can be either of these 2. But you do need access to one of these, and then 3 material in general. This works because Dramaturge comes back. So you would you normal summon Albaz because you do need the other one. You search out the one you don't have. God, voice cracked. I'm prepared to get roasted. Anyway, normal summon Albaz. You add the one you don't have. So in this hand, we have Brandon in red. We need the field spell. Activate the field spell. You fuse into the first Masquerade Dragon. And the reason this is hilarious is because when Masquerade Dragon is live, obviously all the shenanigans start. Dramaturge comes back because it was used as material. You want to set this and use it on your next turn, that way you can bring this back. So you pass your turn, draw phase, Brandon in red. Brandon in red adds a Despia back from the grave to your hand, so we add Albaz back to hand, and then you immediately fusion summon by banishing from your hand or field. So you banish these 2. Sadly, you do lose Albaz, and you don't get its graveyard effect, so you can't get the recursion with the field spell and Albaz in play, but 2 Masquerade Dragon is hilarious. Banish these 2, summon another Masquerade Dragon, and then remember, Dramaturge doesn't care if it was used as, it doesn't care if it's banished or not, it just cares if it was used as material, so you bring back Dramaturge. You got 2 Masquerade Dragon, and if you had Dramaturge to begin with, then you have an additional negate with that, and then whatever other hand traps or things you drew. And your opponent is now paying 1,200 life points per card activation, which is hilarious. Do remember with Masquerade Dragon, it has the effect to bring itself back from the grave if your opponent has a ritual or extra deck monster on the field. When you do that, it does not burn. This card says when this fusion summon card is on the field, when it comes back from the grave, it now qualifies as special summon, so it does not get the burn. It's still handy to have as a body on the field, but when you do that, it no longer gets the burn, so just keep that in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is you should already know this with this card already, but I'll just say it again. Your opponent paying life points is cost. So if you're under anything that wouldn't deal damage, like you activate Dark Ruler, so your opponent wouldn't take damage. If they activate a card effect, they still take the damage because it's cost to pay it. And then funny interaction that hasn't really come up for me. Well, no, actually it has come up for me once, which was really, really funny. Since it's cost to pay life points to activate cards, if your opponent is under the life point threshold they would have to pay, they cannot activate cards. So let's say we have 2 live Masquerade Dragon on the field like we have here. Your opponent's paying 600 life points per copy, so they would have to pay 1,200 life points to activate a card. If they are under 1,200 life points, they cannot activate a card because it is cost to activate cards and effects. That's how this card reads. So if they're at 1,200 life points, they can activate the card, but you just die and lose on the spot. But if your opponent has 1,100 life points or less with 2 live Masquerade Dragon on the field, they cannot activate the card, meaning all they have is a normal summon or an inherent special summon. But if they try to activate a card or effect under the threshold, you simply say to them, no, you cannot. And they'll ask you why, and they'll say you can't pay the cost for it. You have to pay 1,200 life points, 600 per copy. That's come up for me before, and it's just so funny whenever that happens, because then they just look at you like, really, we're doing this, and yeah, it comes up, believe it or not, and it's just really, really funny when it does. Those are some of the just the basic ones that happen with that. Another basic interaction to know would be, clear some of these out the way. If you have tragedy, anytime you have tragedy in general, when it's sent to a grave or banished by a card effect, which is why we play. That's why we play stuff like Foolish Burial. Because if you don't have access to this and you know the Despia monster, you just Foolish, send this to grave from the deck, and then you use this effect to add a Despia monster to your hand. If this is sent to grave or banished by card effect, you add a Despia monster to your hand. That can help. Sometimes that can help unbrick you. It can just help get you value. There's just a bunch of different ways to use that. And then the second effect actually does come up. You can only use one effect per turn, so you can't use both in the same turn, unfortunately. But you can banish this from the grave to reset a branded spell or trap. It's mainly how you can get back the field spell and why you're not really worried about not playing 3. So if this is in the grave, you just banish it. You set the field spell back to the field, and then you can just activate it again. You can use that to bring back the other ones. Like if you have Branded Opening in the grave, you can banish this to set it and use it the next turn. Or if you need to get Branded and Red back to be able to fuse with that, there's just a few different scenarios where that comes up. And then in my last video with the deck profile, I showed you the funny interaction with Eltlage and these cards. So go take a look at that because it's really funny and it actually comes up sometimes. But one of the best interactions that you can have with Despia Tragedy is with the quick play branded opening, and enjoy more voice cracks because apparently I can't speak today. But this is probably one of the best interactions you can get value wise, just because you get so much off of this. So first of all, remember branded opening. Activate this, discard a card, and either add to your hand or special summon a Despia monster. That is not cost. It is upon effect resolution, which is why this card is so good. That's why if you're running a Shaddoll package, this card triggers Shaddolls, so you can get Shaddolls rolling, and that's why this is probably one of the best 2-card combos in the deck, because you get so much value off of this. So you activate Branded Opening. If your opponent lets that resolve, because activate, see if your opponent has a response. And then upon effect resolution, you discard a card for cost, not for cost, for effect. So you discard Tragedy. Summon something from the deck, usually Owlbear, just because you get a bunch of value off that. You have to summon it in defense, by the way, which does come up, because there are some situations where you have this set on your opponent's turn, you just activate it just to special summon something in defense to make you live. You want to summon something like Dramaturge and attack, because Dramaturge is a 3k body, but you can't do that. It has to be summoned in defense. But anyway, you activate this, discard for effect upon resolution. Summon something from the deck, usually Owlbear, because then you get to search a branded spell or trap. Get the field spell if you need it, get branded in red. It really depends on the situation. Most of the time, if you don't have access to the field spell, you kind of want that. But situationally, you can get branded in red as well. This happens, this is going to happen simultaneously, by the way, because this resolves. So then you can go 1-2 or 2-1, whichever way you want to chain block, get the field spell, and then add whatever other Despia monster to your hand you think you need. Do you want to Owlbear for follow-up next turn? You can do that. Do you want a Dramaturge to be able to use as material? You can do that. Are you going to do funny shenanigans with another one this turn? You can do that. Do you have access to more material in the grave that you can recur? Add ad libitum. That's why we play 1, because this card is pretty nuts once you're set up, and it's really situationally dependent. But you're probably going to end up adding Dramaturge most of the time if you don't have access to that, just because it's free real estate. Then you would go into your fusion plays, fuse these off for either Quiritus or Masquerade Dragon. This comes back, just the standard stuff that happens most of the time. Those are going to be some of your basic interactions, and then obviously this one doesn't even really warrant going over just because it's so obvious, but obviously if you are playing the Phoenix Enforcer package, anytime you have Fusion Destiny in your hand, do all your normal plays, activate this one last. So if you already have a setup board, if you got Quiritus and the field spell and Dramaturge, access to all those, then you activate Fusion Destiny, you dump the bricks, and then you summon Funny Man, because Funny Man is really, really good, and then you just have access to that as well. And yeah, that's why we play it. You can only hard make it in this deck. You can try to find room for Verte if you want, but there's almost no scenario in which you're going to end up with just 2 monsters on the field to be able to go into Verte and you're most likely going to be locked into fusions anyway, because remember, branded opening does lock you into fusions from the extra deck. Not in general, you can still special summon anything else you want, but the only thing you can special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn is fusions, which is why we play so many fusion targets. Also remember, this does come up, this does have a Balance effect. This has a substitution destruction effect for your fusion destruction monsters, which is why Dark Hole is something really funny in the side deck, because you can just Dark Hole if you have one of these on the field, and then you substitution effect this. You banish this from the grave. You can only use one of those effects per turn, by the way, so you can't use the search effect and the substitution effect in the same turn, unfortunately. But this does come up. Do remember that this has a substitution protection effect, because that is relevant. I think that's about it to go over in the deck. The only other thing would just be whatever super poly targets you're playing. Obviously, there's all the Albaz stuff, but I am playing the generic ones. Obviously, I can't really go over that in this because that's really dependent on the board, but just remember that Super Poly is a hell of a card, and use it as you will. I think that's about all I've got. I think I covered most everything that you can do in this build of the deck, at least. Obviously, you can change it around, but yeah, that's about all I got for this. If you have any other questions that I didn't answer, feel free to comment below, and I'll try to answer those best I can. And beyond that, thanks for tuning in, and have a good rest of the day.